smorgasbord of meditations, like a little sampler of meditations, so that you hopefully have enough to go away with, so that you can work with it on your own and with the support of Venerable Tendron, who has a wealth of experience in this area. So I want to see today if there's any questions, if people understand what we've done. What have we done? What is meditation, number one? What is the definition that we use for meditation?
It means to become familiar.
Right, okay, yeah. So, hey Felicity, hey Doren. So if you take that as the definition, then it means, if you think about it, to become familiar, it means that we have been meditating all our life, but on the wrong things. Because why I say the wrong things, because they lead to the bad result. So when we meditate on being angry, and that doesn't mean that we sit down and meditate on being angry, it's just that our whole environment has supported the angry mind. Our parents undoubtedly got angry, the environment gets angry, the news media is constantly angry. You don't learn in school the disadvantages of anger. And so it becomes a habit that you're probably carrying with you from previous lives anyway, but it's a habit that's imprinted on your mind so that it's a very easy process to keep following. The path has already been cleared. You've already gone through the jungle with your machete, and you've already carved the path of anger. So when even a very slight something comes along that doesn't accord with your script of how things are going to be, it triggers, activates your walk down that path of anger. But if we assess that walk down the path to anger, we see that it doesn't produce results that are beneficial. And we're going to actually concentrate on this meditation today, because just talking is like the first step in this whole process. Because if the words don't make sense, if they don't catch you, then you turn off right away. So the words have to hook you. They have to make some kind of sense. The next step in this process is your personal contemplation of what the words meant to you. You have to do contemplation. And if the words make sense, then you owe it to yourself and to those around you that you care for, the whole wide world, to engage in the meditation to see if in fact you can change your mind. And if you change your mind, then you can change your experience. Because you've got input and you've got output. Input anger, output arthritis, tense body, unhappy mind, and destruction all around you. The opposite of anger is patience. So if you input patience, the output is, instead of a hand like this, it's a hand like this. Instead of a heart like this, it's a heart like this. So when you get that personal experience, then if you're intelligent, this kind of submersion or immersion becomes really meaningful to you. And that doesn't mean you give up your worldly activities. Of course not. If you're really enthralled with your worldly activities, or you need to engage in your worldly activities because of financial reasons or whatever, you continue. But this is your workshop in which you now use this new information. So remember what I said, when we meditate, we do it in a seated posture, because then we have no distraction of body, no distraction of mind. But the whole objective is to get up and take it with us, like charging your phone. You don't keep your phone on the docking station all day. You dock the phone so it gets charged, so you can take the phone off of the docking station and use it wherever you go. And that's what we're doing with our mind. We're submerging our mind in these practices so that we can change the color or the way we operate, the modus operandi of our mind. So when we get up, it goes with us. And chances are we're going to get knocked back. We're not perfect. But now remember that mental spy, we've started to watch what happens. And so when we see something that happens in our mind that doesn't make us proud, that takes us backwards, we acknowledge it. This is not a place for guilt, because guilt is like putting a wet blanket on top of your head and carrying it around forever. Guilt, I can't think of one positive thing about guilt, but regret is so amazing because it allows you to assess your situation honestly. Give yourself a report and either rejoice, yay, your inner cheerleader, that you did a good job, or regret your action, take a look at what you did, feel sorry that you did it, know that you did that because your new habit wasn't in place, and get back to getting the new habit in place. It's so extremely practical, this whole thing, this whole psychology, this whole, this Buddhist psychology and the implementation, the practice of meditation is so extremely sensible. It unravels this mystery of life and this confusion energy that we walk around with most of the time. So does that make sense to people? He's a thumbs up. Graciela, Faye's a thumbs up. Okay, good. So what were just to recap, so we've been here, I don't remember how many weeks we've been here, but I've tried to introduce you to different types of meditation. So what have I introduced you to? Anybody? Nobody? Arlene?
Stabilizing and analytical.
Okay, what's the other one though?
I only knew the two, stabilizing and
anybody else?
What?
I'm just seeing if there's anybody else who has
Visualization, yes.
Right. Okay. So this is an extremely simple way to explain the meditation process. Remember, meditation meaning to familiarize. So with the visualization meditation, you mingle your mind with your already perfect qualities. So remember that, and you have to test this out and see, the mind is not inherently negative. When we have a negative response to a situation, that's superimposed upon our clear light nature. Our nature is clear. That is our nature. These other things are superimposed upon them because of these bad habits that we have. So we did the body of light meditation. Even the 9-round breathing is actually considered a stabilizing meditation, but I think it's like a visualization meditation because you visualize your body being clear, and you can't have a clear body if you don't have a clear mind. Okay, so then we went on to the analytical meditation, and what did I say the analytical meditation does? The one is mingle your mind with your already perfect qualities. And analytical meditation does what? Nicole, you're muted.
Your mind into a realistic position.
Yeah, thank you, Tal. Yeah. So the visualization meditation, you mingle your mind with your already perfect qualities so that you become familiar with that mind, your natural mind. When you do an analytical meditation, you move your mind into a realistic position. And, okay, so the people that were with us last week, the analytical meditation we did with what?
Wasn't that picturing your friends as enemies and vice versa?
Yeah, it's called the equanimity meditation.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so you visualize your friend, your enemy, and your stranger. And you see that these labels that we put upon these people it's very subjective. It's not objective at all. It's subjective. Because if we were to put the label enemy on a person and we held that person to be self-existent as an enemy, that means that person could not have been a stranger before. It's a self-existent enemy. It couldn't have been a stranger before. But the fact is they're all strangers. Everybody's a stranger before we put another label on top of them. And then what they start out as a stranger, then they become either a friend or an enemy or remain something of indifference. And why is it that these labels are imposed? What is it that causes these labels to be imposed? Our own
Impermanence.
pardon?
Impermanence.
Well, our own perception. Our perception. Yes, it's impermanent, but it's how it pleases or displeases or doesn't affect me. You have something to say, Graciela?
Yeah, I was thinking that it's our attachment or aversion. So, yeah, that's what it was.
It's all about me. Me, 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 me. Everything is about me. And if you take a look at the whole wide world, there's a whole lot of other people out there, and we're just one. And yet, we create the universe according to us, the world according to me. So we've got this enemy, and now we tell everybody this is our enemy, and we try to get people in our court about this is an enemy. And then we've got this friend, and we do everything for this friend, and then we've got the person we absolutely don't care about. Now that's not realistic, because the common denominator behind every single one of these people, what is the common denominator? What's the uniting force behind every single creature from the cockroach and on up? What is that one thing that we all have in common?
The search for happiness.
The wish to be happy. Right. So if when we do this meditation, we take that into consideration, what we're doing is now we're moving our mind into a realistic position. So that when that person arises in front of us and we immediately slobber that person with the label enemy, because that person has given us a harsh word, or that person has done an action that violates our sensibility. And immediately, because of our meditation practice, we're able to do this fast computation that they're only doing it because they want to be happy. And they don't have another recourse. You have saved yourself and a lot of emotional stupidity. Because when we respond like this, there is no winner. But again, this is where you have to check up. But this anger response makes no winner in the room. Most of all, you. You're the one who gets that effect. And then you ruin it for everybody around you. And you might have even been wrong. That person might not have been your enemy at all. Even in a conventional way. You might have just misheard one word. It happens. It happens. People misunderstanding one word, and there's a blow up. And afterwards, when it all calms down and you find out, well, I didn't say that. And now you've lost all this good energy, all this goodwill, and it happens. Does that make sense? Has anybody ever been angry before? So Lama Yeshe used to say, and I think this is, if there's one takeaway, take this away. Lama Yeshe used to say, there is never any excuse for anger. That's a pretty amazing statement. You should write it down and think about it. There is never any excuse for anger. That doesn't mean that in situations one doesn't have to take action. That doesn't mean you're a patsy. That doesn't mean you get walked over. It means that you save this energy in here. This is where anger starts. Here. If you've got a contractor who's totally made a mess of things, that doesn't mean you just say, oh, okay, that's it. I mean, you can do that. You can take action too, but it's here we're talking about. What's going on inside here? Are you out to get them? Are you out to show them? You have to watch yourself what's going on in here. Check up, like that. So did anybody, so last week we did this equanimity meditation where we equalized the friend, enemy, and stranger. Did anybody think about it during the week? Because that's where it's valuable. You do it, you sit with it, but it shouldn't just be forgotten when you get up and walk away. It should be something that you transport with you so that you're able to see. Now, maybe we're not going outside, but read the news. There's a lot of really good opportunity to equalize friend, enemy, and stranger in the news. Did anybody have any good stories to tell? Or yeah, Graciela, you did? You're shaking your head. Felicity?
Yeah. Oh,
Graciela, anybody?
yeah. Well, I think about it all the time. There are some people that are really hard to get them off of the label enemy, but at least I'm aware that it's a choice, that I could have more compassion. Yeah, the enemy, I would say, is in the news is the hardest one for me.
Yeah. Felicity? No, nothing? Okay. Okay, so I think Graciela's example is a really good one, because even if you can't equalize the enemy, even if you don't have that much practice where you can equalize the enemy, at least table the enemy. Try to watch what's happening and not emote. Because when you emote and when you start to talk and gossip, it cements in that. I mean, you cannot get me to talk politics. I will not talk to you about it. I will not, absolutely. Because everybody, I don't believe anybody in politics is operating with the wish to hurt anybody. I don't believe it. So I won't talk about it. But my friends do. Everybody does everywhere. But I won't do it. Not a way, no chance. No way. No. Okay, so let's move on to the next analytical meditation, and that is to meditate on the disadvantages of anger. This is an analytical meditation where we move our mind into a realistic position, and that's where Lama Yeshe would say there is never any excuse for anger. Never any excuse for anger. Anger only hurts. And you're going to say, well, yes, it's sometimes necessary. And again, I'm going to come back, but there's no excuse for anger. Taking an action.
When she started it now,
Sorry?
she said
Jackie, I didn't hear that first part you were talking about.
About that there's never any excuse for anger?
a little before when you started when you said let's move to analytical meditation, and then we didn't hear.
Okay, the disadvantages of anger.
Okay.
So we're going to take a look at anger, and we're going to start to familiarize our mind with the disadvantages of anger. And again, these meditations aren't done one time. This happens a lot when people first start doing meditation. They say, okay, I did that one, what's next? Well, did you do that one to the point that it has absolutely, profoundly, 100% changed your life? Do you no longer see a friend, enemy, or stranger, but you see a kind, mother, sentient being who's doing their very best without any input, any education? We meditate on the disadvantages of anger. You do it one time, it's over? No. Are you able always now to never have it come up because you know of the disadvantages? When you walk in complete equanimity every day, all of your life, complete equanimity with a complete understanding of everything that's going around, and with a heart full of compassion, maybe then you stop. But until then, you practice these. It's, in my mind, most important thing to practice. But again, remember, we do it seated, so when we get up, it goes with us. So when we're faced with that person, and I've had a lot of blow-ups just this week with people not performing to my standards. And I see it happening, and then I go away and have to undo those stitches, you know, like the bad stitches in a sweater. Yeah, my air conditioning people. Anyway, so let's just jump into this one. And what are the 3 parts of a meditation? Anybody? What's the first thing you do when you sit down?
Set an intention.
Yeah, motivation. Second thing, you do the meditation. Third thing, Felicity?
You dedicate.
Dedicate. Tie it all together. Perfect package. Okay? So we have a little bit of time. We're going to do
What was the third thing?
Dedicate. Dedicate. Motivate, meditate, dedicate. MMD. That's your degree. MMD. Motivate, meditate, dedicate.
Sorry, just now you were talking about undoing the stitches. Do you mean this is undoing the stitch when you're...
So the undoing the stitch is this. It's when you do something and you recognize you've done something that's counterproductive. Like, for example, my situation was this completely innocent person from my air conditioning company called 3 hours into an appointment to tell me that they were going to come the next day instead of the day that I'd set aside 6 hours for them to wait. So 3 hours into the appointment, this person who's just a telephone person called, and I knew they were going to call because they never show up. And so I treated her more harshly. She's nobody. She's not going to change the company. But she got the brunt of my frustration with the company. And I could see myself doing it. I was actually prepared to do it because I knew they weren't going to show up because they never show up. So she got the brunt of my frustration. And when I hung up the phone, that's not at all the way I want to operate. I'm very sorry for what I did. So that regret starts to open you up for change. Somebody else who isn't involved in this process might say, well, she deserved it because she works for that company. Or she deserves it and she'll pass it up the line. She won't pass it up the line because nobody in that company is listening. Does that make any sense, Faye? So when you see yourself doing something, like in the case of Graciela, who's always very kind to share her experiences, when she has that enemy image arise, she can go back and say, you know, that was the result, that thinking was the result of a faulty thought process, Go back in time and I can see that that person is just the result of their own faulty thinking. That doesn't mean you vote for that person. That doesn't mean you support that person. It means you guard yourself from a negative reaction to that person with understanding. There's never any cause for anger, and there's always a cause for understanding what's going on. So when you do something that isn't the end result that you want, immediately it's called confessing. I mean, it's even in Christianity, you know. You let go of it. You don't hold on to it and justify it, which is what people do. You say, that's the wrong result, I'm so sorry. And then you look at the thought process that got you there and you release it. And then you say, and I'm not going to do that again. So I did call the air conditioning company and I did get the result that I wanted, but I talked to the right person. I talked to the manager, the supervisor, not to this poor lady on the telephone. So that doesn't mean we don't do what needs to be done. What it means is we change how we are doing it inside here. Does that make sense? Great. Okay. So let's just jump into this meditation because we just have a short amount of time to do this. You want to start with checking your own posture. The posture is important because the body and the mind work together. And if what we want to do is place the body into a neutral position where we know that we're not harming the body, and in fact, we're helping the mind to be peaceful. So you can check if you're sitting on a cross-legged position, on a cushion, check that you're in a comfortable cross-legged position. If you're on the floor, if you're on a chair, you want your feet flat on the floor. Your hands are in your lap, the left on the bottom, the right on the top, fingers aligned, palms cupped, and this brings the thumbs together naturally into a triangle at approximately the navel level. The singularly most important part of your posture is your spine. You can check your spine to make sure that it's straight by checking your shoulders. Your shoulders should be back and down and directly over your hips. Your head is slightly forward. This casts your vision down towards the floor. But you don't want to be distracted by your vision, so lower your eyelids, allowing a slit of light. The slit of light is to keep your nervous system alert so that you don't fall asleep. The tongue is on the upper palate behind the front teeth. The lips are lightly closed and the jaw is loosely opened, and this is your ideal meditation posture. We'll sit with it just for a minute or even 30 seconds because we have very little time. Take a few breaths. In and out. Feel the weight of your body on your meditation seat. And for just one moment, focus on the breath flowing in and out. And simply experience the slight sensation of each inhalation and each exhalation. Just stabilize your mind. And then think about why you are sitting here. And it's going to come back to that fundamental reason that we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. I do not want to experience even the slightest distress of body or mind. However, as long as my mind is easily overcome by disturbing attitudes, such as anger, there is no hope for lasting happiness. But not only that, all living beings, every single living being is just like me. They just want happiness, and they want to be free of suffering, just like me. But just like me, their minds get so easily overwhelmed by afflictive emotions. This is why there are relationship problems. This is why there's sickness, why there is war, why there are so many problems in the world. So just imagine a world free of afflictive emotions. How wonderful it would be if myself and all living beings were free of disturbing emotions. How wonderful it would be if our minds were happy and at peace. Think if I could overcome my own anger, if I could undo the stitches in the sweater, the bad stitches, the bad way of thinking of my own mind, if I could do that, how amazing it would be if I could share that with others. How amazing it would be. So now I'm going to become familiar with the disadvantages of anger so that I can apply the antidote the very second it begins to arise, and I can cut off that disturbing emotion at its root. So therefore, with the sincere wish to become a source of peace and happiness for myself and others, now do this meditation on the disadvantages of anger. So when you make a motivation like this, you should actually feel a strong sense of nobility, because this is a priceless, precious attitude to hold. So with that motivation, call to mind a specific time in your life when you have let yourself come completely under the influence of anger. Bring to mind the details of the experience when you were completely out of control, and don't tell me it hasn't happened. And then recall that experience both mentally, what kind of hell your mind was in, and physically. So let's start with the discomfort in your body. Think about when you were overcome, outraged with anger, and how did the body feel? From the heart out. And now think about the insanity of your mind. Both your body and your mind are burning with the wish to harm. Remember things that you said and did while you were intoxicated by anger. It can almost make you cry because you're so sorry that it happened. So relive it with intensity, from the heart out. A mind full of this insanity. So now think of times that when you were like this, or when others that you know were like this, completely insane with anger. And then think of the situations that resulted from that anger. They often say that the people in prison are really likable people. But in the fit of anger, this intoxication of anger, they killed somebody. Maybe you've lashed out at somebody, or certainly verbally lashed out at someone. Maybe you threw something. Or if you've never emoted that heavily, think of others you know that have been in a fit of anger, completely intoxicated and enraged by anger, with no space or separation from that mind, and they threw things, or tore things, or kicked things, or screamed. So remember it. And then allow yourself to feel regret. See how the happiness, how the anger burned up your happiness. See how the anger took even the seeds of happiness. It's worse than a forest fire, anger. Because it depletes your positive energy. And feel really sorry that you were so out of control, because you were out of control. Nothing could have stopped you. Nobody could have stopped you. Deep sense of regret. So now check up, while you're in this state, check up on the disadvantages of anger. And see if these disadvantages are true or not. So I'll list the disadvantages and you check up. Anger makes even the most beautiful person appear unattractive. Think of the first people you have seen when they are angry. Do they look attractive? I always say the next time you get angry, run into the bathroom and look in the mirror and see if that's the way you want to look, because that is the result of anger. Anger destroys your physical health and your mental peace. Check up and see. Now there's all sorts of medical data that proves that anger creates high blood pressure. It facilitates heart attacks. And your body is put under a great deal of stress when you're fueled with the fire of anger. Anger makes you lose any sense of discrimination. It forces you and others to act in harmful ways that you regret later. It is your boss. When you are angry, that anger is your boss, and it makes you do things that you regret later. Anger makes you lose friends. Nobody wants to be around an angry person. Anger creates enemies. Once you have harmed someone, they naturally want to harm you back. And if they don't harm you, at the very least, they definitely do not want to help you. And you may become the object of their prayer for everything to go wrong in your life. And when anger is present in your mind, you check up. There isn't any chance to be happy.
There you go. Here we go.
Check it up and see, how can you be happy when you are angry? And anger destroys the cause for your future happiness. Because now that's the machete that's carving a pathway. It's causing the habit pattern. You get angry once, you get angry twice, you get angry thrice, and now you have a pattern. Anger has a destructive nature. When anger has dominated your mind, you want to harm people and things. Anger creates a very tense and uncomfortable atmosphere, and when you are angry, you cannot be trusted. Who knows when you're going to go off again? Everybody walks around you like they're walking on eggs, because who knows? If it's something small could set you off. Anger destroys relationships. Anger makes people lose their jobs. Just watch TV, listen to the news. And anger causes people to kill one another. You don't say, "I love you so much," and stab someone with a smile. You do it because you're under a mental affliction. And during battles, entire cities and the natural environment and innocent others are destroyed. Battles, whole countries against other countries, because everyone's seething with anger. Just imagine, while you're experiencing anger, we don't need to talk about hell being someplace else. Because when you are completely 100% union oneness with the wildfire of anger, you are in hell. And it's terrifying, because if your breath were to stop at that moment, you would stay in hell. And just think, when you're in the middle of that rage and your body's all tense and your face is distorted and your heart is black, what an ugly sight you are. People have aversion to you. They don't feel warm and close to you. There's something everybody wants to run away from. People want to harm you. And then what happens is people will behave to you the way you behave to them. It is the way it works. And because you've created these neural pathways, because you've gone in with a machete and created this habit pattern of being angry, you can't help but get angry again and again, and you will continue to suffer. You will continue to help others suffer by proximity, and you will teach them. Perhaps your parents taught you to be an expert at being hateful and angry. So think about these disadvantages and then ask yourself, what use does anger have for you? Try to find a redeeming side to anger. You're still holding it in your mind. We created that experience earlier in the meditation. So now where is the advantage of it? And I can not think of one. So then think, not only do I need to stop anger from arising again, I need to purify those times when I acted out of anger and free myself from all those karmic propensities, those seeds, those habit patterns that I've created in the past. And then make a strong determination. Think that when I feel the heat of anger arising, even the slightest irritation that could develop into an angry thought or an angry word or worse, an angry deed, I will avert it like a snake in my path. And if I find myself under the influence of anger, I will immediately feel regret for going down the wrong path. And I will expose that habit pattern. And I will do something contrary to that, and then I will make the determination for it never to occur again in my mind. And practice patience. Patience is an amazing antidote when you feel the anger coming on. When you're in the middle of anger, there's not much you can do. It's very difficult when the wildfire is burning. But if you feel it coming on, take some deep, deep breaths and try to put the gears of your mind into a more positive direction through the practice of understanding and patience and love and compassion. And you'll make new neural pathways, new habit patterns. And think, I must become adept in doing this. This is the real meaning of my life. All the external things that I do are simply the playground in which I get to practice this amazing task of subduing my mind, eliminating anger, replacing it with patience and love and compassion, and what a beautiful world it would be. And hold that feeling deep in your heart. and let it pervade your entire body. And relax your whole mind. And this is you. Not the angry you, but the true nature you. So we've gone a very quick trip from anger to peace. And think you want to dedicate this trip of letting go of the anger, this very quick journey from anger to peace, by meditating on the disadvantages of anger. Think, may all beings and myself be completely free of the angry mind and all of its results. May we have a peaceful world. And may it start with me. There's no use in pointing our fingers out there and saying other people should have understanding. Other people shouldn't have anger, when we don't do it ourselves. Think, may I swiftly attain enlightenment, and may I lead all beings to perfect highest happiness. May the precious mind of compassion, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Hey, I love where you live, Jack. It's a cute little house in the background. Anybody have questions about an analytical meditation? Does it make sense that with an analytical meditation, you move your mind into a realistic position? Make sense? Is there anybody out there who still remains convinced that anger is just super fantastic? You like anger, Felicity?
I would say that there is an advantage of anger. If we're able to be mindful enough, it can indicate where like the 8 worldly concerns are coming up or other delusions are coming up. But we have to be like very like skilled and able to be mindful. But then if we're like, if we notice that anger, then it can be useful to see like, oh, like I'm thinking about myself here, or like I'm want to be praised, and like that gives like a new nugget of information to work with.
Right, if you're very skillful, darling, if you're very skillful, that can happen. But you don't need to cultivate anger in order to have those results.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that, but
Yeah.
it can have some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on how mindful you are, you know, and that's right. That's right. It depends on how mindful you are. What we're talking about here, though, is the advantages, meaning something that you want to cultivate. And there's no value in cultivating anger. Actually, you don't need much help in cultivating it. If you're anything like me, you've probably been practicing for a while. But does that make sense to everybody else, aside from the contrast that Felicity offered? That the disadvantages of anger are tremendous. There's no upside to cultivating anger, but there is an upside to cultivating peace, to cultivating understanding, to cultivating. The opposite of anger is patience. I truly, truly 100% encourage you, the next time you feel anger coming on, you just run right into the bathroom and take a look at your face. because we're all so concerned about how we appear. And that's not the way you want to appear. I'm going to tell you for sure. But you put a smile, and then all of a sudden anybody looks beautiful when they put a smile on their face, like that. Well, it's been my pleasure. We have 4 minutes. Oh, actually, we have to jump off because Venerable Tendron's coming on. But it's been a pleasure I've met a lot of new faces. There she is. Met a lot of new faces, and that was really nice. And I like to see where Jack lives. He lives in some sort of Nordic village. And I look forward to seeing everybody in the future.
And,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
and before we go, we just want to thank Jacie so much for all of these tools that she has given us over the last several weeks. And to clarify, we will still do meditation on Sunday mornings. We'll be doing it at 10:30 instead of 10. And then Venerable Tendron will lead us through some of the meditations that Jacie has been doing. So she's given us a lot of tools. Now it's time to practice using them. And Jacie has agreed to do some practice days coming up in the future for us. So those will be showing up on our website soon. And yeah, so I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that Jacie's not leaving. She's going to be back with us, and to let you know that we will still be doing meditation on Sunday mornings. But again, the time starting next week will be 10:30, and then Venerable Tendron's class will start at 11 to 12:30, similar to what we were doing at the center when we were physically going to the center. So again, thank you so much, Jacie. We really appreciate all your time and knowledge.
And I just want to close with saying, don't think that because the center is online right now that the center doesn't still need your support, because they're still paying rent for that place. And just imagine how wonderful it would be that when the time ends and that everybody gets to go back into the center, how wonderful it would be if the center had its own place. So put that into your thinking cap and start motivating and dedicating your efforts to the day that the center can have its own facility, not a walk up through an office building like that. So keep going, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacie.
Bye.
Thank you, Jack.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jacie.
So we'll take our break, quick break for just a couple of minutes for all of you who need to, do some jumping jacks. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Tendron.
How are you doing?
Doing good. Trying to wake up earlier. Been sleeping in a lot lately, staying up too late.
It's easy to do when you don't have to show up at an office.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm a night owl myself, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. How's your quarantine going?
I had to be very diligent about making myself go to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, I just stay up later and later and later. And
What
then,
do you do? I'm curious. I'm guessing you don't play video games.
No, I don't play video games. You are correct. I tend to read a lot.
Oh, nice.
I get caught up in some book, and then I just kind of, forget. So, or I get awake again. You know, you get your seventh wind and keep on going.
Yes, I did. And she was better than when I first spoke to her. But I think something needs to be attended to. And Bloomer did not call me back.
We're snooping in on a convo.
Yeah, somebody needs to mute. You're having a personal conversation, perhaps.
What are you reading, Venerable Tendron?
Well, I'm reading a book called No Self, No Problem. I'm reading a Vajrayogini book. I'm reading, now, you know, this is a angry person. This is a, you know, an inadequate person. And we want to understand how that's not true. We're constantly changing. So there's no horrible Tendron, you know, to hold on to. Even though I may tell myself that. And the trouble with telling myself that is that it becomes my view. And what use does it serve? What's the likely outcome of that view?
Well, things can always be worse.
I mean, I could be even more horrible than I am right now. How does that help?
Well, it doesn't help. It just makes things
So
worse.
that's not really constructive. So we need something, you know, how can we, you know, really look at what we're doing? You know, what is the benefit of seeing yourself as horrible? Is there any benefit?
No, there's none.
Okay. So what's the result, though, of seeing ourselves as horrible? It's
You're reinforcing negativity.
Yes, you're reinforcing negativity.
You're harming yourself. You're not bettering. You're not giving yourself positive messages.
True. And what do we know about that? What is reinforcing? We're reinforcing our, you know, idea that we're horrible.
It means your habit will be greater.
That's right. Susan, did you want to say something?
No, it's just that it's very hard to stop when this kind of thing is going on. It's hard to stop your mind.
That's why the pause is so important. That as soon as you become aware of it, instead of following the storyline, but, you know, or however the frame of the storyline, just pause a moment. See how, check in with your awareness of both your body and mind. And perhaps when that moment passes, you know, when that self-loathing kind of has a break, you can choose not to feed it any. I mean, this is the advantage of the pause, is when we're pausing, we're just experiencing, we're not doing anything. And it's not like it has to be fast. I don't know about you, but my mind is really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really about, you know, a pause. Okay, there I go again. No need for that. So part of it is really looking, you know, this is the advantage of meditation. So when you're sitting quietly thinking about things like our beliefs, we can examine whether they're valid or not. You know, and then whether it's useful for us to hold on to this belief and practice ways to respond to it when it arises. Because it's going to arise. If we have that habit, that's what habit means. It's going to come back. But the more we can interrupt it with a pause, not feed it, not give it more fuel, listing all the reasons why it's true. We might want to, you know, learn what are the reasons why it's not true. Yes, Graciela.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking that the advantage, I'm not saying this is right. I'm understanding it in a broader, but the usefulness for me has been about feeling horrible, has been that I feel so horrible that I know I want to get out of it. I want to get out of it really bad. And so then the only way to get out of it in my head is to think, what am I going to do to fix this? What am I going to do to take care of this? And when I get to that, I begin feeling some peace and some ease on the way I feel about myself. But what I hear from you is that I don't have to feel horrible. Number one, to get a thought about what I need to do, that I could just be gentle with myself and still do what I need to do, that shift in my thinking. So I very much appreciate this sort of reframing of my options.
Well, that's the thing, is that when we hold something to be true, if we don't examine it, it's very hard for our reasoning of why it's not true to get space to operate, you know. And we're still, as long as we still grasp after our reason, you know, our belief in being horrible, then every instance of unskillful behavior, unskillful speech, unskillful thinking, we just put it in that file that says proof, I'm horrible. And that's not helpful. Because it's an exaggeration of the negative aspects of our behavior of body, speech, and mind. It's as if that's all we are, when in fact we're none of it. We just have these moments. We have good moments, bad moments, indifferent moments. And what the Buddha is trying to help us understand is that our nature is free of all that. We have the capacity to completely change all that, to choosing how we want to speak or think. But in the moment, these habits arise. We just don't want to make that groove in our brain deeper. We want to start a new groove in the brain. And we can't do that if we ignore the habit that arises. Because just thinking it reinforces it. You know, so it's not, you know, it's not enough to pretend like it's not happening. Now, are we going to catch it in every moment it happens? No. Let's hear a resounding no. Of course not. And we don't have to beat ourselves up about that. You know, that's the thing, is that, you know, it's just more of like, you know. So being able to pause, and gentleness is that, you know, not, when we pause, we don't want to reject, and we don't want to, you know, feed it or, you know, expand on it. We just want to accept what's arisen. We don't have to create a story or continue the story, because usually we, you know, we realize it's somewhere mid-storyline, you know. Or when we wake up, you know, in the sense of when our minds decided, okay, I'm bored with this, let's go to something else. And we realized we just spent 10 minutes, you know, just zoning out with self-loathing. So, so it's really useful when we recognize it. It's really brave too. I mean, it takes courage to recognize these habits that aren't skillful. Because what comes up? Why does it take courage?
It's so uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. Why do you think it's uncomfortable, Felicity?
Oh, we're getting into that like intimate part of the mind, and like it's like pushing on a bruise, and it's like maybe like as if you go for a massage and it's like really painful, but the only way to get it out is by like working it out, but you don't want it to be touched.
To me, it's it's partly because we believe it. We believe the story. And if it's self-loathing, that's a pretty scary thing to believe. But we already believe it. Looking at it really doesn't provide any danger. So we need to recognize that. But it is a vulnerable feeling because we're so afraid that it is true, that we can't change, that it is who we are, you know. So it takes some courage to just acknowledge it. I mean, I think one of the functions of our storyline, you know, where we just follow a story, is it helps us escape from really penetrating what's happening. You know, it's like when we get angry, the story just justifies our anger, you know. And it also takes us away from that personal feeling of feeling hurt or harmed or sad or, you know, frustrated or whatever it is. We just, you know, we just live in the story. You know, if you've ever noticed that, you know, when we're trying to meditate, you know, and we go, wow, you know, like suddenly the bell rings or something, you know, and you know it's at the end and you realize I haven't been present at all. I've been caught in some story the whole time, you know. It's that recognizing of what an escape the storyline is. You know, it distracts us from the experience. You know, we don't have the experience of that state of mind, how it feels in the body. We've just moved on. We've just very quickly grasped onto the storyline and let it drag us away from the experience. So check on that. You know, notice that when, you know, it's like when you come back to the present, have you just been running away? You know? And it's interesting, you know, when we see these studies about how people are more content when they're focused on what they're doing. So that our strategy of just whenever we're doing something that's not thrilling, you know, to just think about something else. That it actually doesn't have the effect of making us more content. We feel that dissonance between where our mind is and what we're actually doing with our body. Sitting there at work, whatever. Sitting at the family Sunday dinner table, whatever it is. But it's just, you know, it's this recognition that one of the reasons we follow the story is it can have the effect of shielding us somewhat, giving us a little bit of stepping back and not having the experience. So it's brave to just pause and recognize, oh, I'm not comfortable here. Or, I'm really frightened. or I feel vulnerable. And the good news is because this is a mental process, we don't have to share it if we're not in a suitable place to share it. You know, either because the other's there, it's just not an appropriate time or place, or, you know, or they're not people you know well, that you trust. You know, we can still, you know, we don't have to just open ourselves up everywhere we are. I mean, an enlightened being is like that. But we have to go step by step. Because we still have the mind that can be hurt, wounded, you know. So we, you know, it makes sense that we would be judicious about who we share our vulnerabilities with. But first, it's very helpful to share them with ourselves. To understand, oh, that's what's going on. And understand that creating some story around it, like most of our stories usually revolve around, it's someone else's fault that we're feeling this way. You know, if they hadn't used that tone or those words or whatever, you know. And then, you know, and that, you know, that story that we think is protecting us doesn't protect us. Has anybody shielded their hearts in a relationship, so-called shielding your heart, kind of protecting yourself? Did it work? Did you not get hurt? It doesn't work. You know, our fortresses that we build don't work. For no other reason to abandon them. We could look at that. They don't work. You know, you might be so successful that you don't have relationships. Then what do you end up with? Anything?
Alone.
Yeah, that might be a good thing. But if you want companionship or you want to interact, I mean, we are not isolated. There's 7 billion of us. There's at least one way we're not able to distance ourselves. You know, we keep having more of us. So figuring out how to connect, part of that is being comfortable with our own vulnerability. Being brave enough to just recognize when we're feeling vulnerable and not run away. Doesn't mean we have to share it. It just means that we don't run away in our minds, go someplace else. I know that for me, I used to, somebody want to say something? Someone's not muted. So for me, I used to really not feel like feeling hurt or sad. You know, I mean, I don't like it now, but I used to just turn it into anger because anger didn't feel so bad, because anger says it's somebody else's fault. You know, you're just a jerk. You know, you hurt me because you're just a jerk. It's nothing to do with my qualities. You know, so it was very hard for me to learn how to sit with being hurt. And especially because, you know, it's not like that's going to stop happening. Unless I stop responding with being hurt. You know, it's like the sticks and stones. Yes, Graciela.
So, so you're feeling heard. What can you do? What can one do to move away from that?
Lean in. Experience the hurt. It doesn't last forever. We just acknowledge to ourselves, wow, that hurt. And then when there's time, because when these things happen, there's not always time. But one of the things I learned to do was in that pause to remind myself, I will attend to this later. You know, because if it happens in a busy day, crowded space, blah, 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 you may not be able to attend to it without like getting a car wreck. You know, if you're driving and your partner says something that just, whoo, stings you. So it's just, you know, it's about learning to just, be curious, as opposed to thinking hurt is the only way to feel. It's just what's arisen. Not holding on to it, not running away from it. Just to pause and experience it. Find your breath. Yes, Faye.
And I guess just employing what Jacie said is like changing the words. Like say we're angry and we say, oh, because that person doesn't understand me, or that person, blah, blah, blah. Maybe changing the words that we're saying that we use to ourselves, right? Like, well, maybe that person's trying to protect me, or maybe that person saw something that I didn't, so that we don't get hurt. And
well, that's what we want to do later when we're reflecting on it. First, we don't want to run away with the reasons or anything. We just want to have the experience. How does that feel like in the body? How does that feel like in the mind? And learn how to tolerate the unpleasantness. Because if we can't tolerate the unpleasantness, we always feel like we have to do something. We have to fix this or fix them. But the world is full of difficulties. Life has complications and difficulties. So yes, we want to reflect on it later to be able to sit there and take it apart and go, well, I didn't, being hurt or angry isn't the only responses available to me. Because say you find out that they meant every word of it. So then that informs you about the relationship, the interaction. It also reminds you, oh, this is another suffering sentient being with out of control, states of mind and habits, So one of it is this idea that because I'm practicing, other people should be too. No, it's that other people would be happier if they were practicing too, but they had to find their way. First we just focus on us. And then when we're enlightened, we can focus on others.
Wait, so if they mean it, then how do we deal with that?
You have to develop your inner wisdom of not taking words as truth, not taking actions as truth. These are just moments in our lives, and how we respond to them determines whether or not we're increasing our suffering, creating the causes for more suffering, or reducing our suffering in the moment and creating the causes for happiness. So one thing is, I've been divorced kind of a lot. So, I know about failure in relationship. you know, and there's a point at which you have to go, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's me. So sometimes you want to look at the words and go, is that true? Do I do that? And if you do, then you have to look at that. And that's your opportunity. Oh, I can change, you know, if I don't know that I'm doing this, or if I'm not aware that this is harmful to others, then I'm not going to do anything about it because it's obviously my habit energy. I've been doing it. So one thing is to be able to step back from the words and just, okay, what is it, you know, checking the information. Do I act like that at times? And it's very important to not use words like always. Just, do you sometimes do that? It's like I treated my partners entirely differently than my friends. You know, I was a much nicer friend than I was a partner. So, you know, it's about recognizing that, you know, we're not always this or always that, but we are unskillful. And so we want to look and see, is there any truth to that? That doesn't mean the other person was skillful in the way they expressed it. It's about, you know, checking up. Instead of looking at it, oh my God, you know, I just won the certificate of jerkdom, you know, or, you know, you want to be able to look at it, oh, I'm getting some information I need that's going to help me change for the better. You know, be curious, see the potential there, see the opportunity there. Not just say, oh, someone's caught me out and here's proof, I'm a horrible person. Because we tend to get stuck there. We think we can't change because we believe we are that. So that's kind of a problem. Yeah, Rebecca, yep. You're still mute.
Sorry, I had to unmute. But don't you think it's also skillful to sometimes recognize that the other person is a jerk? I mean, conventionally, that we can't, as Buddhists, just, I mean, it's our karma, and we may actually, it may be true what they say, but that you also don't want to fall into this sort of Buddhist trap of, it's my karma and I should be dealing with it, you know, or they're a suffering sentient being, and sometimes it's skillful to know when to get out of the situation.
Yeah, Buddhism isn't teaching us to tolerate what others do to us. It's about tolerating how we respond. So if anger arises, hurt arises, you know, aggression arises, that's something under our control with time and practice and effort. You know, we can't control the other person, but we can choose whether or not it's skillful for us to stay with that person. No doubt about it. My ex-husband would agree. You know, the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me is to call me an abuser. It changed my life. Was it hurtful? Ooh, yes. Did it crush me? Close. But it was the reality. I had to, you know, you have to. So sometimes you're the jerk. That may not be true of any of you, but I was. So, you know, it's about being able to go, okay, I can either let this paralyze me and not do anything and just accept this label as who I am. None of my friends would have agreed with that label, but my partner was totally justified in that label. It was not a hurled insult kind of thing. It was just a fact. So yes, it was very important for me to look at that. And we have to be, you know, this is the beauty of a precious human rebirth. We have this incredible physical support for our mind. So even though we're stuck in samsara, you know, and we're not anywhere close to enlightenment perhaps, and blah, 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 we have the ability to use wisdom to look at situations and make decisions about adjustments in situations. You know, so it's not like, oh, I just should take the label abuser and stay there. Or think that that's, you know, there's no point in me doing anything because, you know, I'm going straight to hell, which is probably true. But, you know, it's just sort of like, you know, that's the trouble with grasping a view. If we grasp a view, we make it permanent, fixed, unchangeable, and we keep reinforcing that view. Now, do I still burst into tears when I think about the way I've treated others in my past? Yes. And I don't ever want to stop that. I always want to regret it. So acknowledging what we've done, said, thought, isn't always pleasant. We can't erase our past. And just because it's not our nature, I can't say I am an abuser. I can only say I have acted abusively. And I can't erase that, but I can move forward from that. I can change that. And this is why I have total confidence in the Buddhist path, because I have changed that. Does it mean I still don't say some, you know, snarky, sarcastic remark occasionally? No, I wish it did. If you knew where I started from, it's a long road out. So, you know, it's a very deep habit. And if you looked at my family, you can see I was born in, you know, it's like I can see why I was attracted to my family. So, you know, this is the thing. Is it amusing that I was an abuser? No. No, it's just that that's not my nature. And we need to understand that this is what the Buddha is saying. No matter what we have done, it can be purified. We can move on from it. We can do differently in the future. We just can't go back and erase the past. And that, you know, we have to live with that. And we can learn from it. It's a good thing. So one of the, you know, it's like, I think Felicity was saying during the meditation that sometimes anger can inform us about something. You know, I mean, it's not that, it's just that understanding that the mind of anger is totally a suffering mind, and that we can make we can be informed by information without being angry with practice. Someday we won't need to have a button pushed. We won't have to trust in anger as the only way to fix injustice. We can come from a place of compassion and love. Am I making sense? No. So is this a comfortable conversation for me to have? No. You know, sorry, I have to live with it. But I hope it's useful to understand that, yes, you know, we may be in situations, circumstances where we want to look and go, maybe not a good condition, you know, and move on. You know, and hopefully, do it the sooner the better, but we have to also have some confidence in our judgments. And so bringing our awareness to what's going on in our mind and seeing habits that might not be so skillful, that might just be reinforcing beliefs that are not helpful and that aren't true. I mean, that's the main thing. They're just incorrect. We want to start new habit patterns, so when you hear, say, criticism, your first place isn't hurt. Your first place is just to listen to the words. What are they saying? Get clarity on what they're saying. Try to understand what's being communicated. And if they're not skillful at communicating it, we still don't have to be hurt. Now, this takes practice. So first you just get hurt, just same as usual, But then when you have some time to sit and reflect on it, you can take it apart and recognize that even if you've made a mistake, a terrible mistake, you can, address this in your habits. Because you are not that moment. This might not be building your confidence in your basic goodness. Oh well. So when you sit, it doesn't have to be formally on a cushion, but it is nice to periodically through the day, as Jackie's mentioned, to take a few moments with your breath, And one of the things to just allow is this, where you're not trying to develop your concentration on the breath, but you're using the breath as just sort of this way to be anchored to this present moment, but tending to just what's in the mind without following some storyline. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, nothingness, neutral? If it's unpleasant, you want to be able to tolerate the unpleasant. If you look and you realize, I'm too busy in my storyline to even notice. I don't know whether or not what I'm experiencing, what I'm doing right now, if I find it pleasant or unpleasant, because I'm not here. The body might be there. And sometimes when we have discomfort of the body, we follow some storyline to distract us from it. The trouble is that just reinforces this habit that escaping from unpleasantness is the only option we have. But that's what animals do. That's what our pets do. Oh, the sun's gone away. I'm going to go find another sunny spot. The sun's too hot. I'm going to go find a cooler spot. We want to be able to tolerate unpleasantness. We want to experience pleasantness. We just don't want to grasp after them as if they're permanent. That's part of the belief we have. We have this belief that if it's unpleasant, it must stop. And hopefully I'll figure out a way to make it stop forever. Well, welcome to the samsara. That's not going to happen. But our response to it can change tremendously. And this can help us build some confidence that no matter what comes up, that, I'm not a horrible person. I'm not, there's no prescribed way I have to be. I can choose in that moment by being aware of what's going on and what's going on in my mind and not be reactive. Because what's going on out here is all degrees of complications, as we can know from what our current experience is. Thoughts on this?
I think this talk has been very, very helpful. You know, I really do. I appreciate it a lot. Especially when you're kind of trapped in an environment, you know, for a few months with the same person. You can begin to, you know, you can begin to maybe react in a manner in which you might regret later.
Yep.
So it's been helpful to me. Thank you.
Robert, were you gonna?
Hi, it's Veronica. Yes, this subject is very, very good, but also very difficult.
Yes.
One of the things for me that I have trouble with is that I agree. I mean, we have to think about the words and maybe examine ourselves. But sometimes I'm caught up on, I don't even listen to the words because I'm already dismissing, because I'm looking at the person. And I find myself that I don't want that person to be right. So I don't even listen to the person because I have these emotions against that person at that moment, or, you know, for days or whatever, that I don't want him to be right. So I don't even listen.
Yep. So that's one of those things we have to pause. You know, this recognition, I'm not listening anymore. It's being driven by this desire that it not be true, that they better not be right, you know, whatever. But mostly it's really important to just pause. And this is when it's so helpful to be able to, if you can, if it's appropriate, to be able to say to someone, I've got to table this discussion for a little while because my buttons have been pressed and I'm not really able to listen. Don't blame it on the other person.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're not reactive, you know, sometimes we can listen. Just understanding, you know, and if there's someone in your world that you choose to be with, that you never want to listen to, that then you need to evaluate the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but the first thing is just recognizing, oh, I'm not even listening, you know, and maybe then you quietly think about what was said at the very beginning when you were listening before you shut off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have some space. But it's important to just let the other person know that you're not able to listen, that you're trying to listen, but you're not able to listen in this moment.
Yes, that is a challenge because sometimes the other person is not like in your same level, trying to bring some distance.
They don't have to understand.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to have a good response.
Yes.
Again, it's not about controlling the other person. I used to follow my husband around the house. No wonder he walked out. But I mean, the point is, whether or not, you know, the person has a reasonable response to your request or a loving response to your request or a patient's response to your request, doesn't mean you can't make it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just important to let the other person know you're not actually listening. You're trying to listen, but you're not, you know, because, you know, there's sort of no interaction going on there. But mostly so you can pause.
Yes, and one of the thing, another comment that I had is in regard to these hurtful experiences that we have. It also comes with, is forgiveness part of the story or something that we need to do at some point?
That's part of the story. It may be something we may choose to do, but in that moment, you're just experiencing whatever has come up.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going anywhere with it. Otherwise, you're skipping the experience.
Yeah.
You're following a storyline to take you away from it. So it's really important to just pause, stop a moment, and just, what am I feeling? This is how we get familiar with what are unskillful habits. If we're suffering, there's something in the way we are processing whatever's happening that is a condition for us to suffer. The way we're processing, the way we're thinking about it. And so we want to, understand that better. It doesn't mean we can prevent ourselves from being hurt, but we can certainly reduce it. But it's not fun to find out that we may have some habits that harm others or that people don't like or blah, blah, blah. That's never going to really be fun. But it can be an opportunity, you can start to want to hear. That's why they talk about bodhisattvas being delighted whenever they're around difficult people, because they become less difficult people by handling the situation. Yes, Arlene. You're muted, Arlene. Oh, you don't mind it. Okay. Judy, did you have a question? I'm just noticing whether you're muted or not, so. Felicity, is that a hand raise? By the way, the place for raising your hand is under participants. It gives you the choice of raising hand and something else. None of the other things do I understand. Just so you know. Felicity, go ahead.
Someone does have their hand raised on the participants part.
I don't see them. That's the problem. I can't see all of you. You don't fit on my screen.
It's Peggy.
Peggy?
Yes. When you mentioned following the story and continuing that is an escape, that really hit home to me because, I've never heard it phrased that way before. And it's something that I feel that I do. And now, I know following the story, I can pause, but now realizing that, yes, it is an escape and it is just a story. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah. So check this out. One of the reasons we do it is because we're usually experiencing something unpleasant. And we won't build up our tolerance to what's unpleasant if we don't pause a moment to experience it, if we just jump into story after story after story. And that doesn't give us any wiggle room. Yeah, Faye.
So when you say experience it, because I'm guessing it doesn't mean like going into a spiral of being like, oh my God, that person did this. So
that's a story.
Right. So experience it meaning just like put into words, right?
No.
Like what you're feeling.
There are no words.
Oh. Okay.
It's just being aware with your mind of awareness of the body. Unpleasant is an experience. You don't have to name it. And so if you're not used to looking, and most of us are like this, we are just immediately in the story. There's no gap. We don't actually allow ourselves to experience it. We want to move on. This is what, grasping at what we like and rejecting what we don't like. This is our habit. And what the Buddha said is this: that's not going to ever lead you to any kind of lasting happiness. It just leads you from craving to craving to craving to craving and away from everything that you find uncomfortable. And that doesn't build your strength in recognizing that actually we don't have to respond in a way like anger, makes us feel miserable. So if we can learn that, oh, maybe anger is not a habit I want to have. If we can learn, maybe impatience is not a habit I want to have. But as long as we continue with the story that it's happening outside of us, or the other one, I'm just a horrible, angry person. You know, we're not giving us any space for change to take place. And we don't, you know, we're not recognizing what it is that's happening when we feel unpleasant that we're trying to run away from. So we need to get more familiar with that. So Felicity, did you, I mean, it's noon, so we need to end, but okay.
No, we can go to 12:30 if everyone wants to, and if you want to, Venerable Tendron. Felicity had her hand raised, Joy had hers raised, and Graciela as well.
Okay, Joy? Oh, you're muted still.
That was a while ago, but I wanted to say that I think that hurt is kind of imaginary. It's what you create in your own head. And also, I think you've said in the past that if somebody's hurting you, it's them. It's their thing, and they're projecting it on you, and you're being hurt by that. And I think if you can go to another level, I think you should feel some hurt. There's nothing wrong with feeling hurt, but to realize that it's really not you. I've gotten that from past things that you've said.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a moment. Our unpleasantness is just a moment. And if we change the way we respond to these moments, we will be hurt less. We will have less fear. We'll have less anger. You know, so it's just, but it's, you know, it's not like everything changes overnight. You know, but it is, all of it is a story in our head. You know, it's all mind. It's not like, I mean, even when your body hurts, there's a difference between your body hurting and you mentally suffering about your body hurting. Now, we can't change the physical experience of the pain, whatever the body pain is, but we can change our level of mental suffering that we add on top of it. And that's a story for another time. Hopefully there'll be something in there that's not so much of a story. Anyway, is that it? Because I've got something, I've already scheduled something for later. So, but next week we will go back to more of our center schedule. So try to show up if you want for the meditation at around 10:25, so we can get you online, and we'll practice meditation, and then the teaching will start after the meditation. So, and then we'll go to 12:30. But that'll be 2 hours total, just like we've been having is 2 hours total. So, so 10:30 to 12:30 next week. And if you just absolutely refuse to show up for meditation, okay, see you at 11. So, anything else, Rebecca?
No, I don't know if Felicity had a question. Her hand was raised for a long time, but maybe she's gone. But no, just we will see you all next Sunday. And then we have tomorrow night, we have book club. We have Bodhisattva's Way of Life on Tuesday. And on Thursday, we have a brand new module of discovering Buddhism, which is on death and rebirth. So that will be exciting, not morbid. So I encourage you to participate in that.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Let's dedicate. Yes, we've created lots of merit by thinking from a different perspective. So we want to dedicate it to be of benefit to others. If I remember how to share screen. May all beings everywhere, plagued by suffering of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, well, thank you very much for your participation and being here, and unmute and say goodbye.
Bye.
Have a meaningful Sunday.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.